You've now learned about the PDSA cycle, and every step in the cycle, starting with plan, where you identify a concrete change to test, and then think through exactly how you'll go about trying it out and learning in the process, and the logistics of planning that out. Before you get to that point, even though it seems straightforward, there's a really important pre-planning step to take that will help you target and focus in on an area that's really right-sized for rapid learning. This step comes after you've identified what in your system you want to improve, the primary driver you're interested in impacting, as well as where in your system you'd like to begin your work, the secondary driver. From here, it's important to take a step of zooming in and really trying to pinpoint what it is in that area of your system that you'd like to try to improve. If you have a focus that's too broad, it can be hard to learn quickly from your test and to understand what you're trying to learn in the process. If you take time to focus in, you have an opportunity to really try to identify things that you can rapidly and iteratively test and set yourself up for some quick learning. But how do you go about figuring out how to identify these things that are right-sized for some quick learning? There are some considerations that can help guide you as you're considering different change ideas. First, is this change idea within your locus of control? Is it something that you, in your role and in your context, have the capacity to try to do some experimenting with? Do you have the resources, the time, the people, the infrastructure, the materials that will allow you to work in this area? For you and the folks who may be joining in this testing with you, do you have the bandwidth? Do you have the time, the energy, the motivation to work in this area right now? Similarly, is this a good time to test this change idea? Here you might think about the rhythm of the academic calendar, your daily or weekly schedule, or other events going on around you. Is this the right time to be able to learn in this area? Related to this, you might also want to be thinking about, are there opportunities here for continued learning? Is this something where you can iterate and quickly try again to continue and deepen your learning? And finally, are there any other logistics in the system that you might need to be able to think through for this to be a productive area to focus in as a target for learning? Let's look at an example of how these criteria can help inform planning a PDSA cycle. We're going to start our work and this example thinking about Eagle Point Middle School. Eagle Point Middle School was proud of graduating its 8th graders, but it recognized and learned that only about 80% of those students were successfully completing their 9th grade year. In other words, students who are graduating from Eagle Point, about 20% of those students were being retained at the end of 9th grade and not progressing right away to 10th grade. This was really troubling to the team, and they thought that they could do some things in 8th grade to better set students up for success as they entered high school. And so they dug in to try some improvement work. They began by doing a causal system analysis, really trying to understand the problem and how their system was supporting students. From this, they developed a theory of improvement. They set a 3-year aim to be able to, by May 2027, improve from 80% to 90% the Eagle Point graduates who were successfully completing 9th grade. In the process of investigating their system, they also identified 3 target areas that they thought would be high leverage to improve student success in 9th grade. Those areas were students' mindsets that promote resilience and really building those, looking at adult instructional practices and adult mindsets, and finally, building student behavioral supports. Those were the 3 things, the what, that they thought they could impact to move towards their aim. They also identified where in their system they could work on each one of those. For example, related to students' mindsets and resilience, they wanted to work on revision and resubmission of work and grading policies. These 2 things together, they believed would really help them build and have an opportunity to live a culture of we are continually learning. This team further focused and decided their starting place, given where they were in their year, was revision and resubmission of work. They really believed that if they were able to build processes and habits in students of reflecting on their work, revising it, and resubmitting it to improve their scores, they could strengthen students' growth mindsets and resilience. So even though the team had identified that they wanted to focus in on revision and resubmission of work as where in the system they wanted to begin, there was still opportunity for them to focus even further. It left open a lot of possibilities for places that they could start making changes. For example, they could look at where students were receiving feedback on their work to be able to inform their revisions. They could also focus in on retesting practices and how students were resubmitting things. They could also focus in on student study strategies. There were still a lot of possibilities. Within their improvement team, their 8th grade math teacher, Mr. A, had volunteered to go first with testing changes. And so they asked him to reflect on the different criteria that might help them decide what a high leverage place to start would be. He thought about his practice, thought about where he was in the year, and just came back and said what he'd like to do is focus on strategies for students to retake tests. He explained this was very much within his locus of control, and he had the resources to do it. This was all going to fit within his classroom and his academic day. Similarly, he was excited about it, and he knew that he had time within his planning to be able to give this some attention. It was a good time to try this because he was just nearing the end of a unit and his students were soon going to be taking an assessment. And so there would be a quick opportunity to get started. And as he looked ahead at the next unit, students would be turning in multiple assignments, and so there would be new opportunities to test over time. This didn't have very many complicated logistics, so he was really ready to get started. With this, the team had focused in from a broad area in their system they wanted to work to a specific strategy, retaking tests, and they were poised to start planning a very specific change.